right, we're doing it. Welcome everyone to the April 2023 meeting of CPO 1. We are also live streaming on YouTube, and we always start with our I always forget, if I leave the YouTube on, I get my own voice 5 seconds later in my ear, and I can't handle that. All right, welcome back. We acknowledge the people on whose land we live, the Atfality Kalapuyan, also known as the Tualatin Band of Kalapuyan, the first inhabitants of Washington County. We are grateful for the land we're on, Kalapuyan land. Signers of the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855 were removed from their homeland to the Grand Ronde Indian Reservation. Today, their descendants are tribal members of Grand Ronde and Celeste tribes, carrying on the traditions and cultures of their ancestors. We acknowledge and express gratitude for the ancestors of this place and recognize that we are here because of the sacrifices forced upon them. In remembering these communities, we honor their legacy, their lives, and their continuation in our community. I'd like to invite all of us to reflect on the role government has played in the painful colonial history and reflect as well on the resilience and healing of the indigenous land and communities. We invite everyone to collaborate and work together with the tribe to take care of the land and the water and the people who inhabit these spaces. And here we are. I am on Zoom, but no. Okay, Randy, I'm going to keep all of the candidates in the attendees section until it's time for the attendees, until it's time for the candidate forum. So your camera won't be on until we're ready for that segment of the meeting. But thanks for being here. I'm keeping track. We have quite a few attendees that are panelists, that will be panelists, but right now we have some CPO1 business to deal with. First of all, I'm going to paste the link to the March YouTube meeting. So if you didn't come to the March meeting, you're welcome. Oh, hi, we have an attendee. Yay. And then we've got some service providers. So I know the sheriff's folks are here. We have Lieutenant Jagman and we have Tabitha Alkire. And I think Tabitha was going to be the main presenter. So you are welcome to unmute and talk to us.
Hi, good evening. My name is Tabitha. I work for Washington County Sheriff's Office. I am in our Community Outreach Public Affairs unit. I just want to make one quick public affairs announcement. We have our canine trials on Saturday, May 20th. It's located at Hillsborough Stadium, and it will be from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's a great family event and a free event for the community. And I'm going to pass it along to Lieutenant Dagman to speak about some of the previous questions from the last CPO.
Hi, everybody. Kelly Dagman here. I'm just catching up, to be honest with you. This is my first go around. I just stepped in this position when Lieutenant Rawlinson left, but I am going over the last couple meetings and some of the requests for numbers and some of the crime trends that you guys are seeing or that we're seeing. I want to make sure that we make those available to you. And I believe, and Tabitha, you may correct me, did we send those numbers out to individuals in the audience? Do you know?
I do not know.
Okay.
On that, I would have to ask Patty because she
Okay.
was at the last CPO.
Okay, well, I can make them available. That's not a problem at all. So, well, are there any questions right off the bat that you guys want to ask before I go down some of the top 6 crime trends or crimes that are occurring in the area? Or is there something specific that you would like to know, or just an overall update?
We usually get your update first, and then sometimes that stimulates people to ask questions.
Okay.
But we don't have a ton of time. We do have a fairly full program later, so take it away.
Okay. All right. Well, you should have received the crime map that generally we talk about, and for CPO, it's one with all the little triangles on it, from green that represents burglary all the way down to blue, which represents trespass. And when we look at those and do comparables with the last cycle or the same time period last year, we are we're actually a little bit below in certain areas, like the burglaries and the frauds, mischief, and recovered stolen vehicles. There are thefts that have gone up a tiny bit, and those are mainly thefts of opportunity. When I'm looking at the numbers here, individuals who are keeping property in their house, or excuse me, in their cars that are visible to individuals that are walking by, they're just basically breaking out the windows and taking what's visible: purses, wallets, keys, cell phones, computers, computer bags, stuff like that. So I want to remind you that if you do have a vehicle that's on the roadway, accessible to the general public walking by, that you take the time to remove those items and make it less opportunistic or available to the individuals who are in the area. And then the other numbers that I want to make sure that I highlight are the theft of vehicles is number 1, and then right down to the theft of vehicle parts. And again, that goes back to the catalytic converters. And when we talk about the thefts of catalytic converters, they're actually part of a tracking process. So as they're stolen or cut off vehicles, we capture them through crimes under burglary or theft of vehicle parts or accessories. And then what we do then is we calculate those numbers and we report on those. So right now, in the same time period for 2022, we had 199 catalytic converter specific thefts. So that's a little bit lower than it had been in the past. So we've seen the spike, and now we're kind of seeing it dropping down a little bit. And there are some things that we have done, and that's basically doing some very specific patrols in areas that are hit the highest: apartment complexes, areas that vehicles are left overnight for long periods of time, and some of the communities that are further out, if you will, and there's less street lighting, there's not as much community activity, there's not as many neighbors walking their dogs, stuff like that. So they're picking these areas, and that's where we're making sure that our patrols are being focused on. And really, the other one is the theft of mail that I want to make sure that I hit on. The theft of mail are opportunities that have Amazon, any FedEx packages or UPS packages. Those are always the easy targets because they're generally dropped off when individuals are at work, and people will just drive down the road. They'll see it, they'll pop out, they'll grab it, they're back in the car, and they take off. And we can't be everywhere at any given time. I wish we could, but as we're looking at it right now, in 2021, we had 221 specific mail thefts, and in 2022, we have 127, that same time frame. And as we're looking at it, it's trending a little bit back up. And I think the 22 time frame, because more people were home, when you look at the data because of COVID, now that people are going back to work, we see those opportunistic thefts occur. So that's kind of the trends that we're seeing. And again, I'll make these absolutely available for you if you want them, especially specific to your area. But what else do I have? I put some other notes on there. I know you guys' time is limited, but one of the biggest deterrents that we have And I was just talking to another group this morning where outdoor lighting is incredibly important, as well as making, and this is something that we don't really think about because of the beautification piece of this, but our shrubbery that grows up in front of homes, in front of houses, in front of windows and doors, it makes it very difficult for us if we're doing a slow roll through the community to see in those areas like the windows that people may be able to, prop open and get into. But there's a rule of thumb that I didn't really think about until I was talking to a landscape security specialist. There's actually those people. And they talk about cutting shrubbery at a minimum of 2.5 to 3 feet away from your home. It does two things. One, it creates a barrier in case there's a fire or other hazards. And the other thing it does, it allows you, the homeowner, to be able to look down the sides of your homes, and you can readily see if things have been moved or out of place, or like footprints or anything like that. And that's something I really didn't think about until we were talking today, and it just kind of sparked, something in me. And I kind of walked on our own property, and I'm like, man, that makes sense. So I just wanted to pass that on as well. So that's what I have for those areas. Very
Well,
specific.
we have a question from the audience, and then I
Yes.
have a question after looking at the map. Shirley asks, didn't the sting of the warehouse in Beaverton lower catalytic converter theft?
Specifically, yes, it did. And it's hard to quantify what the actual impact was because it was a county-wide thing, city agencies as well as county, but it did have an impact. But we saw that dip from those who are involved, and we're kind of seeing it creeping back up again. I'm not sure if that you can quantify that's exact same reason, but we do have what's called transitional individuals that will come from other jurisdictions, other areas. They'll come out to the suburbs, they'll make a hit, and then they go back into, say, Portland, Multnomah County, or even down as far as Marion County. So that we're looking at those numbers, and we're trying to, again, it's hard to find out if they're from around us or if they're transitional and they're coming in and doing the thefts and they're leaving the area.
Looking at the map, I see a real kind of a bunch of fraud in this area, and I'm just curious what that is.
I think, Deputy Basie, when I was looking at those up, the frauds are people that are having their credit cards and identities stolen, and then we take the phone calls. So they'll call us and say, my credit card was stolen and used to purchase, something on Amazon, or my identity was stolen and is being used to open a bank account. When I was yesterday, when I was at East Precinct, we had 2 light duty deputies. They were injured, and so basically they're on desk duty, and that's the stuff they're taking, those frauds.
It's funny that it's all centered in downtown Cedar Mill there.
Yeah, there's the business area. That sometimes happens.
Okay. Well, we've got, unless anybody else has questions for the Sheriff's Department, did you have anything that you wanted to share, Tabitha?
Nope, that is all. I just want to introduce myself and let Lieutenant Dakeman take it away.
Great. I've been meaning to make it to the dog trial for a very long time, and I'm hoping to do it this time. I always think I'm going to make it, and maybe this year I will. I'd love to see those well-trained and amazing dogs we have. Okay, let's move on then. We have Tualatin Hills Park and Rec, Nicole Paulson.
See. Can you
Hi,
hear
Nicole,
me?
thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you, we can see you, we're ready.
Great. Well, I just have a couple updates. One of our big ones is I feel like we just registered for spring, but we are already ready to register for summer. So that happens this week, this Saturday morning, starting at 8 a.m. April 15th, and then out of district residents can start registering on Monday, April 17th. Also, I'm sorry, I'm Nicole Paulson. I'm a representative to Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District. I can put my name and contact information in the chat. And if you have any questions, Virginia, I'm hoping you can let me know if there are any questions. We do have some of the events happening, our 25th anniversary of the Tualatin Hills Nature Center. We've got a variety of self-guided tours, and we're hosting this milestone. Oh, I'm sorry, we hosted this milestone last weekend, but that was really exciting. And we also have the 25th anniversary of the Conestoga Recreation Center, which will have information about an upcoming event as well to celebrate that milestone. Those are two big kind of keystones of the park district. Ridgewood Park Dog Run is still underway. We are working diligently with the city of Beaverton through their land use process. We are still hoping to have that dog run up and running by late spring, early summer of 2023. So I imagine the June timeframe. This hopefully, fingers crossed, our weather looks really good too. So we had a little bit of sun poking out here this afternoon, which was great. We've also underway got our North Bethany project, Heckman Lane, which is over just north of the Bethany Church on Springville and Kaiser. So that is going to be an exciting project to begin. Let's see here. We've got a lot of volunteer and job opportunities regarding lifeguards. Feel free to go check our website out in the job section. And we've also got the splash pad at the Cedar Hills Park is being prepped and ready to be open by Memorial Day weekend. Also hoping some sun comes with that. And then lastly, our Garden Home Rec Center on Saturday, April 22nd. At 11 a.m. is hosting the Dia de los Niños, and the Rec Mobile is hosting a free Pokemon event on also Friday, April 21st. That'll be at 4:30 at Garden Home Rec Center. So a lot of events happening over there. And if I've missed any, feel free to check out our events section at our website. Those are the main updates we have today. Are there any questions for me?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Great. Well, I hope
we'll
you
be
guys
getting out and using your facilities pretty soon.
Yeah. You know what? Let's just put our keep putting our rain jackets on, right?
Right. So let's keep moving. Andrea, I believe you're next.
Well, thank you, Virginia and CPO1. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. A couple quick updates. I know you guys are really, time is an issue, but our rate advisory committee met 6 times and looked at affordability and rate issues. They will be making their recommendation to our board in May. At the May regular business meeting on the 17th of May, and they're going to recommend that the district start a new assistance program. This would be in addition to the emergency hardship program that we have now, which offers one-time assistance, and this would provide a 20% discount to your fixed and volume charges each time a bill is issued for your account. So for our low income customers, you would need to be income qualified. You would have an additional ongoing option, not just a once a year assistance program. So that will work its way through the board and through the budget process. Hopefully, if the board decides to take the recommendation, then that program would be available sometime later this year. We're not sure exactly the launch date because we don't have the funding, and we wouldn't get the funding till July 1. And then we also will need to program our new billing system in order to apply those credits to the qualified customers. So they'll stay tuned for that, but that's what they're going to recommend. And we want to let CPO know that because we did have a really good process with 17 members who really studied the issue, and that's what they came up with. They also made a recommendation that the district pursue a cost of service study and that they do that in 2027. And that may seem like a long ways off, but it will be here really soon. But also the reason for doing that study then instead of now is that we would be on our new water supply from the Willamette River at that time. And the cost of that water would then be able to be factored in to the cost of service study, where if we were to do it now, it would have a very short shelf life because once we switch sources, our costs change. So the purpose of those cost of service studies is to determine and make sure that all of the rate customers are being charged fairly, so that business isn't subsidizing residences and residents are not subsidizing businesses. And you have to know what your current cost is and what number of customers and are in each of those groups to determine that. So look for that to come. And that will,
This department or?
I have a question, Andrea, I got a question.
go ahead.
We are meeting in the Cedar Grove Apartments, which is a affordable housing complex. And the 20% discount could it be applied to the entire building?
No, that's not going to be the recommendation. They did look at whether the multifamily customer class should have this benefit. And they determined that it would just be the residential customers that would receive that.
Thanks.
Yeah. And we did have an expert who came out and the data on that, does not mean it wouldn't help the residents, but rent and rent assistance programs tend to be pegged to the market, not to the utility. So the studies on those type of programs have basically shown that the utility offers the discount, but the renter does not benefit from that the owner of the housing just continues to set the rent at market, which would be beyond the utility. So they did discuss that, and all those recordings and information from those 6 meetings are on our website. The other thing, just to let you know about water quality, we do thousands of samples every year in our system, and also as the source water enters into TVWD system. And those findings from those samples are summarized in a drinking water quality consumer confidence report that will be coming out here in the next month or so. And we also have resumed fluoridation. So we did come and we needed to pause that for a couple of months to do some construction. The construction project did not complete, but we have to resume fluoridation and using that source. And then next winter, we will have to shut down fluoridation again. There was one part, a 48-inch valve in that construction project that due to supply chain issues did not arrive in time. So where this construction is where the Washington County supply line comes in. That's one of our major sources. We can't really run summer without that amount of water. And that's why we have to have these timelines to get back on the regular program, and we'll have to resume the construction project next year.
Great.
Yep, that's it.
All right. Thank you very much, Andrea.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
We also like to hear from Tualatin Valley Fire, Clean Water Services, and Beaverton School District, but I don't see anybody from any of those groups. If I'm missing someone, raise your hand right now, or forever hold your peace. Okay, I have a few announcements. There is where did I put those images? Okay, there's a neighborhood meeting. Okay, where did I put those images? Oh, I know, I'm sorry. Okay, here we go. Watch me flounder. All right, here we go. Share screen. There we go. There's a neighborhood meeting for a partition at the corner of 109th Terrace and Malia Lane. And the Malia Lane that I knew about comes off of South Road, but apparently the county is continuing naming this little section over here, and there's a partition of the lot that's proposed, and the meeting is, I just got it in my mail today, Thursday, April 27th from 6 to 7, and it's a Zoom meeting. And I will post that on the CPO1 Facebook page. The other interesting thing and I will share my screen again, is that we've just learned that there's a sports facility here just off of Rainmont Road, and it's a soccer practice place that's all a big covered utility facility with let's see, didn't with apparently being used as a public soccer practice facility without any kind of permit. And a neighbor alerted us to that, and we checked with the county, and they actually told us what I'm going to read you in a moment. As soon as I get to it, there we go. The development review team is aware. The property had a development partition proposal to split that whole entire property up and do some development. And I was just told that the development review team is aware of the situation on this property and will be meeting with the owner soon to discuss next steps. We have initiated a compliance violation from our code enforcement team for building and use issues regarding use of the structure in question as a public soccer practice facility. The owner has agreed to put his partition application on hold until this issue is resolved. And a neighbor let us know about it. We depend on the neighbors because we can't be everywhere. But I drove by there, and it's a pretty large and impressive facility. And they did have a website and a posting on their Google map, but that's down now. So we don't know what's happening. And the neighbors are saying that there's lots of noise and parking issues. And, you know, you're supposed to get a permit if you're going to have a public sports facility on your property. So those are a couple of things I found out about. We still have time to sign up for Washington County Advisory Board openings. There are a number of them available, and I put the link up. If, in case you're interested, I recommend that anybody that wants to get involved in Washington County government go and take a look. There is everything from Aging and Veterans, Fair Board, Regional Arts and Culture Council, Civil Service Commission, Behavioral Health, all manner of interesting things that people might want to be involved in. And people apply via the website. You include your qualifications. It gets published. The board looks at it and makes their appointments. So a lot of people who kind of want to move into Washington County government and maybe even beyond, they start on these appointed boards and commissions. So get out there, get active. The government is us if we pay attention and get involved. I just wanted to mention, after we have our very interesting presentation from Washington County Health and Human Services, we'll have a candidate forum. And what we're going to do for that is let each candidate make their presentation. And then at the end of all of those presentations, we'll have questions from the audience, both our in-person audience and our Zoom audience. So with that, let's get started on who's going to go first for Washington County Health and Human Services. I see Nick, I see Catherine. Have we got everybody promoted that's going to be presenting? Hi, Nick. I guess you're going to go first.
Could you,
I don't know if we really talked about who would go first. I'm happy to defer to Catherine or kind of step in and take it away, whatever's going to work.
Take it away, Nick.
Nick is first, but could we also promote Emily Roots?
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you. Take it away, Nick.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to go
That's
ahead and do my
right.
best to share my screen right now. Hold on one second. All right. Can everybody see that all right?
Let me go ahead and read our introduction so that we know what we're talking about.
Fantastic.
We asked for an update on behavioral health and addiction services and solutions for people without housing. So right now, we're going to hear about programs for mental health and addictions with Nicholas Ocon, Behavioral Health Division Manager. And we really thank you, all of you, for coming and sharing this information with us. Can you go into slideshow so we can just see the most of your presentation?
You know, it's really interesting. The bar for Zoom is over the buttons that would allow me to put it into slideshow right now. I'm trying to figure out how to do it while.
Well, there's, okay, best you can.
Here, I can try to move this over make that as big as possible. Is that better?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. Well, I apologize for not being able to get this in the slideshow. To introduce myself, thank you for the introduction, Virginia. My name is Nick Ocon. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the division manager with behavioral health. And I'm going to be just talking a little bit about what we do today. And so tonight's presentation is going to be really focusing on what we do with our division, talking to everybody a little bit about the best way to get help and find behavioral health care. And then I want to take just a couple minutes to talk about a really exciting project that our division has in development that we definitely want to share with the community if you haven't all heard already. To get this started, I thought I would just throw a question out there for level setting, just to ask everybody what is behavioral health, so that we can all kind of know exactly what we're talking about today. And Virginia, I'm not sure if people have the option to chime in with an answer or put that in chat, or if you would rather me just kind of talk this through.
Well, we can let people ask questions if that's what you're wanting.
I was just sort of opening this up.
I'll keep an eye on the chat. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I'll just kind of dive in then without any answers about this. And so when we're talking about behavioral health, it's really when behavioral health is an umbrella term, really, that involves the promotion of mental health, the promotion of resilience, and also well-being. And when we're talking specifically about behavioral health treatment, it's important to realize that we're talking about both mental health and addictions treatment. And when we're talking about addictions, we're talking about both substance use disorder and also problem gambling. And so behavioral health is a pretty comprehensive term, and we'll be talking about all those different things as we're mentioning that tonight. Okay. So a real high-level overview of what we do at our county. Our behavioral health division operates what we call a community mental health program, which is really a safety net for the community. And so what that means is we're really charged with offering crisis services that are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through our crisis line, and also mobile crisis services. Our Washington County crisis team is actually operated by LifeWorks Northwest, and the services and supports they offer are all really housed in out of the Hawthorne Walk-In Center. And so those really include our mobile crisis team, our peer crisis team, and also the staff that are supporting folks at Hawthorne Walk-In Center. Our county also is in charge of civil commitments and services to those engaged in the court system. Folks might have heard a term that's been used quite a bit in the media lately called aid and assist, which is services and supports for folks that are unable to aid and assist in their own defense. And so they're either supported in treatment through a process called community restoration, or they go to the state hospital in order to be restored so they can stand trial for the crime that they're being accused of. We work on connecting our uninsured community members to treatment options. We actually have a network of community behavioral health providers who support specifically folks in our community who don't have insurance or are underinsured. And another big area that we have is care coordination for those with really high needs. We contract with each of the 3 coordinated care organizations, which are the managed Medicaid organizations that are located in Washington County, to provide high needs care coordination for adults, children, and families who are enrolled in those plans. One of the things that I really want to highlight and point out is one thing that we do not do is provide direct services or treatments, therapy, counseling, medication management, etc. Our county's really made a conscious decision to contract out all of these services, both for mental health and addictions for our uninsured or underinsured community members. And we don't actually provide those treatments ourselves. I'll also walk through a little bit later about how to identify where to get treatment in our community and how you can identify the providers that we contract with specifically for folks that are uninsured or underinsured in our community. One thing I really want to highlight is how to get help right away. And we always try to elevate how to receive crisis services if somebody is having a behavioral health crisis. One thing to really highlight is if you are in an emergency or you're observing an emergency, please always feel like you can call 911 for immediate life-threatening emergencies. We want to absolutely elevate that. For folks who are having a behavioral health crisis that is not life-threatening, there are 2 different options in our community where you can call and receive 24/7 crisis support with a clinician at all times. The first option is our Washington County Crisis Line. It's a number that I'm hoping a lot of you know very well, which is 503-291-9111. If that's not in your phone, it's always good to have it there in case you or a loved one needs that support at any moment. Another number that's important to remember is 988, which is a national suicide and crisis hotline. That is available anywhere in our country. You can call 988 and you will be routed to a call center that's attached to the area code where your phone number is located. They are available 24/7, and they actually have text and chat options as well to support folks who are in an immediate behavioral health crisis. Another option related to crisis support where you can get help right away on many hours a day is you can stop into our Hawthorne Walk-in Center. We currently have limited hours because of the workforce situation we've been experiencing over the last several years amongst our behavioral health clinicians. And so currently Hawthorne is open from 9 to 2, Monday through Friday. And we're really encouraging that folks call the crisis line before going to Hawthorne. And the reason why we're doing that is they have clinicians that are potentially available outside of those hours. And the crisis line can actually triage to make sure that folks are getting help as quickly as possible. There are going to be times where there's a long wait at Hawthorne, and we want to make sure that we can get help out to people immediately in the community if the crisis warrants that. And so our partners at LifeWorks are really encouraging us to let the community know that they are there during those hours. Folks can walk in, but if folks are able to call the crisis line, you're able to absolutely get the best care in the quickest amount of time. Some ways that our community members can get help when it's not in crisis is really going to be dependent on the insurance that you have as a community member. And so for folks who have insurance, either commercial insurance or insurance through our Oregon Health Plan coordinated care organizations, you're going to work with those insurance providers. And so commercial insurance often has an access line on your membership card, and our 3 coordinated care organizations, HealthShare, whose behavioral health benefit is operated by Care Oregon, Trillium Community Care, and Yamhill CCO all have websites where you can absolutely navigate a behavioral health directory where you can put in language spoken, type of care you're looking for, zip code that you live in, and it'll show you various behavioral health providers that you're able to access. If you are uninsured and are looking for behavioral health care, you can call our Washington County Crisis Line at 503-291-9111 to see if you qualify for the different services and supports, and they can also help direct you to the different providers that we contract with. Really, in order to qualify, you must be a Washington County resident. You must have low income, have limited or no insurance, and have mental health needs that cannot be addressed by other community resources. In these slides, which I will absolutely send to Virginia, this is our Washington County Behavioral Health website. At that link, you can navigate our page, and there are both mental health and addictions providers that are available to serve folks in our community who do not have insurance and meet these other criteria. So like I said, I will get these slides out. There's some other website information that's referenced on these slides as well, and I'll just make sure everybody has that so that you're able to navigate how to get care as easy as possible if you meet these criteria. Additional supports that we have in our community that I always like to elevate are some of our peer-delivered services operated by NAMI, Fourth Dimension, and Comfort Zone. These are all drop centers that are located in our community. NAMI is the National Alliance for Mental Illness. They have a location in Aloha, and they do a lot of peer-to-peer and family-to-family classes for family members who have been impacted by mental illness in their family. They're a fantastic resource. They are insurance blind. They offer a lot of supports to families if you have a loved one or a friend who has been impacted by a behavioral health needs. Fourth Dimension is a young adult recovery center that's located in downtown Hillsborough. They are a peer-led drop-in center for folks who are in recovery. They do a lot of incredible activities that make recovery manageable, that make recovery fun, and really put a peer group around folks that are engaging in healthy activities and in recovery, working toward their recovery lifestyle. We know it's tenuous, we know it's work every single day, and they're there to support our community. And finally, Comfort Zone is a drop center for our community members who are impacted by significant mental illness. That they're also located in Hillsborough, downtown Hillsborough, excuse me. They are operated by New Narrative, and they offer a lot of supports. All of this information can be found on our website as well. And then finally, oh, did you have a question, Virginia?
No, go ahead.
Oh, wonderful. And then finally, I just wanted to highlight a really exciting project that we're currently working on, which we're endearingly calling the CAT. This is the Center for Addictions Triage and Treatment. And really what we're hoping to do is to develop a comprehensive substance use disorder treatment center in our community. Right now, we are very under-resourced when it comes to residential treatment, detox, sobering, and other intensive services for substance use disorder in our community. And we want to lift off a series of supports that are available for our community members so they can receive treatment close to their friends and their loved ones and don't have to leave their community in order to get help. What we're doing with this is we've launched a split campus model where we've actually acquired 2 separate buildings. One of which we're calling our intensive services building, which is the old 911 WACA building on Evergreen Place. We will be remodeling that building once the 911 services have fully moved out, hoping to start construction next year. And that's really going to be our residentially focused services, where you'll have a series of assessment and triage, sobering, withdrawal management, residential and outpatients treatment, and then also what we're calling transition services, which are going to be beds available to folks who have engaged in one of these supports, and there might not be a bed at the next level of care that they need immediately. So we want to make sure that folks aren't falling in the cracks, and we're making sure that we're easing them through the different transitions that they have between levels of care as needed. All of the services that are offered at our intensive services building are going to be operated by CODA. We're partnering with them actively, CODA Inc., who's they're a longstanding partner that's been working in Washington County. We've been partnering with them actively to both to design the building and how it will be remodeled to meet the clinical needs, and then also to develop the clinical services that will be operated out of there. Our hope is that these services will be on board in our community at the beginning of 2025, with the hope of starting with residential and detox and slowly adding the other services on board as we have opened that building. Our community services building is going to be located at 5250 Northeast Elam Young Parkway. It's literally across the parking lot from where our current Hawthorne Walk-In Center is located. So we will be moving Hawthorne across the parking lot to its permanent home at this community services building. This is really an integrated and coordinated service mall that's going to have health services. It's going to have a peer drop-in center. It's going to have crisis services. We're going to have co-located housing supports, a pharmacy, and our behavioral health division is also going to be located there as well. These two buildings are going to work together to actively to coordinate care for the different needs that our community members have who are trying to access these high need substance use disorder treatment services. And we'll be working alongside all of the providers too to be able to coordinate them alongside the mission that we have with CAD, which is really to have folks be able to receive treatment where they need it, when they need it in their own communities. So, and with that, that's the end of the presentation. I really wanted to keep it high level. I'm happy to answer any questions that folks might have. And Virginia, like I said, I'll absolutely get you these slides later today so that you could share it with everybody on this call and other members of the CPO as well.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead and stop your screen share.
Yeah.
I have a question. I had a family member who had mental health issues, and she was trying to get help, but was encountering difficulty, and we never got really good help for her, and she killed herself. But we had another person in our community that had issues, and he did not think he needed any help. He thought he was fine. And we, several of the neighbors were working with him, and we got him to the Hawthorne Center once, and we got him into some treatment with one of the kind of umbrella agencies, but he snowed them all, told them he was fine, and walked away, and he's still got ongoing problems. Is the county able to address any of that? And I know there are legal issues with, you can't just lock somebody up or make them get treatment.
First off, I'm really sorry to hear about your family member. That's really unfortunate. And I want to make sure, like, really elevate, as I was mentioning with the crisis services that are available in our community, they are here 24/7. We want to make sure that if somebody is having a behavioral health crisis, if they're not able to access the crisis they need, the supports they need, regardless of what insurance they have, those crisis services are available. Those the crisis line is absolutely available too. And so I want to elevate that, because every time I hear about somebody who commits suicide, it's every single instance, it's too many.
I just can't imagine that she would have reached out to any of these agencies. And as a family member, I felt kind of helpless.
And absolutely. And when you were mentioning the second individual who you had described kind of snowed the agency, that's one of the unfortunate realities, is that behavioral health treatment, the vast majority of the time, is voluntary. And we cannot force anybody into treatment unless they go through a process called civil commitment, which is a court-ordered process, really for individuals who are determined that they are at immediate risk to themselves or another person, or our community members who have been committed by the courts on what's called an aid and assist, as I mentioned, because they've been accused of a crime, and they're determined that they're unable to aid and assist in their own defense, and so they can be mandated to treatment in that instance in order to be restored to stand trial. And a civilly committed individual is often committed to a hospital, but in all other circumstances, treatment is voluntary. That's the way that our commitment laws currently work in Oregon. There is legislation and work groups really looking closely at what our commitment rules are in Oregon and what our commitment statutes are. But as of now, the vast majority of supports are really voluntary, as I said, and really lean on individual rights to make the determination as to whether or not they're going to engage in treatment.
It's still a dilemma.
It really is. We have two truths where, people being able to make their own decisions, particularly around the care that they received, is absolutely an important thing. And sometimes there are folks that, because of their behavioral health needs, they have a difficult ability making those decisions on their own. And so we have folks who really need treatment who don't necessarily engage because they don't want to, and there's really no way for us to force them to do that.
Yeah, I wonder, just off the top of my head, I wonder if there's a way to frame the message to the people who might need the treatment that it's not such an awful thing and their life might be better. But I'm a communicator. That's what occurs to me.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
We just had a really successful anti-stigma campaign in relation to
Yes, exactly.
substance use disorder. It was phenomenal. I think that the community needs to do more around mental health. And I know that there's a lot of attention on that as well, looking at primary prevention and just erasing stigma around it being okay to not be okay, as we talked a lot about in the pandemic, and people reaching out for treatment and support, because we all need it. None of us are perfect individuals, and we all need a little bit of help from time to time.
True story. Spot on. Thank you. Well, thanks very much for visiting. I didn't see any hands up besides my own. So, Catherine, thank you for coming. And Emily, we'll go ahead and we'll get out of here. And we're going to hear about Washington County's approach to solutions for people without housing with Emily Roots, Public Affairs and Communications Coordinator, and Catherine Gallion, Continuum of Care Program Manager.
Thank you, Virginia, so much for the warm welcome. Catherine and I are going to kind of split the slideshow. I'll start us off and do some kind of more high-level framing, and then Catherine has a real gift for the data component and some of the nuance in our programs. And between the two of us, I think we should be able to answer most questions that come up. So today we're here representing the Homeless Services Division for Washington County, which is embedded within our Department of Housing Services. And just some kind of high-level framing to think about what we know when we design services for people experiencing homelessness is first, housing instability and homelessness can happen to anyone. And with that in mind, it's so important to treat the people accessing our services with compassion and with dignity. And along with that, we know that homelessness is not a single jurisdiction issue. It's not just Washington County. It's not a singular city. And really, we see this challenge across the state. And I think the governor has recognized that as well. And because it's a regional challenge, it really requires regional collaboration on solutions. And we work so closely with many of our city partners as well to do this work. And then the final thing we know is that housing ends homelessness. And we have seen a lot of data around using a housing first approach that has shown that this is really the solution to solving homelessness. And we use the term housing first a lot. That is basically a model where we address someone's housing instability quickly in order to kind of create that stability for them so we can address other needs. So we work really close with Health and Human Services, for instance, when our program participants have behavioral health needs, but those wouldn't necessarily be a barrier to either accessing shelter or housing, because we know that in and of itself can create a mental health crisis. So it's just solving the housing piece is really crucial to addressing those other needs as well. I also just want to think about what our homeless response was pre-2020. This was before the Supportive Housing Services measure was approved and bringing in a lot of resources. So at that time, resources were extremely limited. And across Washington County, we didn't have any year-round shelters that were available for adults experiencing homelessness, and really limited shelter for families experiencing homelessness that nowhere met the need. And we were seeing that extreme gap in services and hearing about it from our service providers. There were minimal new resources each year, and program openings were really happening through attrition. So someone would have to either leave the program because they excelled and moved on, or maybe they dropped off for one reason or another. And that was the only way that we were able to offer anyone on our wait list a slot. So it was just creating an extremely long wait list. So in that environment, the supportive housing services measure was approved by voters in May of 2020 with 58% support across the region. And it was really built and championed by a broad regional coalition of business and community leaders, and is probably I think one of the biggest per capita investments in homeless services across the country. And I saw Catherine nod, which is good because I was not 100% confident. So for our region, it's estimated to generate more than $200 million per year and is really scaled to achieve a functional zero of chronic homelessness. And when we say functional zero, that doesn't mean that homelessness will never occur, but that it will be a brief and rare experience, and that anyone who experiences homelessness can be quickly connected with the services to get them back inside. So we don't have chronic homelessness of people who are experiencing homelessness for even decades without being able to access the resources to address their housing needs. So here's kind of the state of where our system is right now. So we have supportive housing services, which is really focused on providing stable housing for all. It has transparent oversight, both through our board at Washington County and also through the Metro, and then an emphasis on accountability and leveraging existing resources. And with that, we have supportive housing services, but we don't really separate our programs out by supportive housing services versus the continuum of care. Really, we've been focusing over the last few years of integrating all of these resources together because we're pursuing the same solutions. So the funding source, in some ways, it doesn't really matter. We're an exciting moment too, because the governor's executive orders and emergency declaration back in January, we're now seeing the funding awards begin to come to fruition. Washington County was just awarded $8 million over the next year that will allow us to really prioritize services for unsheltered homeless folks in our community. So people who aren't already in shelter or couch surfing, really the visible homelessness that I think is kind of what people immediately envision when they think of our homeless crisis. And then of course, the continuum of care is our longest operating program that we've had to address homelessness. It was our main source of funding pre-2020, and it continues to exist today. So with that one homeless service system, we have kind of a few different programs that we really prioritize. The first one is street outreach. I'm not going to talk about that one too much because it comes up on the next slide, so we'll get into that in greater detail. Then we have emergency shelter that can be broken up into a few categories. So you have year-round shelter. That's a shelter that operates year-round. It's not seasonal, and it gives us a greater stability and resource alignment and getting people inside. And that may be congregate shelter, which basically means shared space. Think of either multiple bunk beds in a room or perhaps multiple mats in a room. That's kind of the traditional model of shelter. Then we have non-congregate shelter, which is essentially each individual or couple or family unit has their own space. The most common way we see this is when we purchase hotels, and that's something that has gained a lot of steam with Project Turnkey and with the greater ability to purchase hotels, particularly in the wake of 2020, which had a pretty dramatic impact on travel. So it's a really great use of that space. And then finally, alternative shelter, which is what you might think of as like pod villages, RV parking, maybe not like a permanent solution, but can be a really great way to utilize space and give people a space to stabilize. We have currently our only pod village right now is available in a partnership with the city of Hillsborough, where eventually they're going to actually develop a year-round shelter. And then, of course, we have winter shelter. This has been kind of more of the historical model that shelter was offered in Washington County, available from November through May in temporary spaces where we can't necessarily offer year-round shelter. But knowing how temperatures dip in the winter, we see it as a priority to at least invest in shelter over those winter months when it really is a life-saving investment. Kind of in alignment with that, we have inclement weather shelter that opens up only sporadically when we meet the criteria for it to be either extremely cold and snowy or extremely hot. And then we activate this additional shelter capacity in a few locations just to make sure that we can really provide that no turn away capacity. Then we work really closely with our housing programs, and that's focused on our regional long-term rental assistance and our housing case management. And both of those are kind of folded into this idea of permanent supportive housing, which is pairing the rental assistance resources with the stability that housing case manager and other supportive services can really provide. So we kind of wrap around the individual and give them everything that they need. So I mentioned I would talk a little bit more about our outreach programs. This map is a bit pixelated probably, but you can sort of see that CPO 1 mainly falls under new narrative in purple and new narrative in green, and a little bit of Greater Good Northwest, which serves the city of Beaverton. You know, these borders are a little funky, hence why homelessness is really a regional problem. And then we also work with Home Plate and IRCO, and they provide outreach services to specific populations, youth and kind of immigrants and refugees who are experiencing homelessness. And overall, this whole system offers 10 outreach providers so that we're able to really cover the entire county and provide that on the ground outreach. Kind of closely aligned with that is our encampment management program. This is also a relatively recent program. It was a pilot launched in 2021 and is really broader than homeless services, I would say, because we work incredibly closely with Health and Human Services, and it truly is a multi-department program that leverages the expertise from several departments. And it's really meant to address kind of the immediate health and safety needs that are posed by increasing unsheltered homelessness. And this program is also a little different from the other ones I mentioned in that it's funded by ARPA, the American Rescue Plan. We know that's not an indefinite resource. So in the coming months, we'll be kind of exploring how does the encampment management program shift, because we still see that it's going to be likely an ongoing need, at least for the next couple of years, in a more kind of sustainable resource. So that's kind of it for my slides. I'll pass it off to Catherine.
Thanks, Emily, and thanks everyone for having us here tonight. Again, my name is Catherine Gallion, and I am a program manager in the Department of Housing Services. I use the Homeless Services Division, and I use she, her pronouns. We're going to dig a little deeper into some of our data and what's working in our system and where we still have some room to improve. One of our primary ongoing annual activities is what we call our point in time count and our housing inventory count. That is a point in time snapshot, a census that takes place annually where we measure, we count everyone in our community that is either in shelter or experiencing unsheltered homelessness. And it's a outreach based, folks walk around the community and interact with folks who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness and complete surveys with them. And we do this every year, and in 2023 we're still tabulating the final numbers, but our preliminary count is coming in around 170 people unsheltered, which interestingly enough is almost the exact number of people that came in to shelter during that snow event that we had just shortly after the point in time count. So really kind of a strong indication that on any given night there are about 170 people who might need to seek shelter in our community. In addition to that count, the point in time snapshot, we have what's called a coordinated entry system where we collect information for anyone who is seeking housing assistance. And that is a longer range program and a broader definition of homeless. It includes households that might be doubled up or just experiencing extreme housing instability and not necessarily currently in shelter or unsheltered. And right now there are about 630 households that are waiting for long-term housing supports and 841 that are waiting for shorter-term housing supports, and a total of 269 that are awaiting shelter. We're also finding that folks are staying in our shelters longer, and this is both a good sign because we are operating our shelter programs for longer lengths of time. As Emily mentioned, we had winter shelters where there was a short timeline where the shelter was actually available for folks. Now our programs last longer, folks are able to stay longer, and they are. The downside of that is that the longer people stay in the beds, the less turnover there is in them, and the less available shelter beds can be. So our goal is to reduce that length of time that folks spend in shelter and move them into housing as rapidly as possible. And really that goes back to that concept of housing first. When people are in shelter, they are still homeless, and the goal is to get into a permanent housing placement. And this is just kind of a reflection of the way our trends have been going as our 2023 numbers aren't final yet. They're not on this chart, but you can imagine our little green box, which represents our unsheltered count, will actually be lower again this year. And for the last starting in 2021, our sheltered and unsheltered counts were starting to tip, where we have more households in shelter than unsheltered, which is great progress for us. If you looked back a few years, we had far more folks unsheltered than sheltered during our point in time counts. And so this chart is reflecting the increase in shelter capacity that we're building towards, and especially reflecting our plan to be less reliant on winter shelter and focusing more on permanent sheltering options, including the types that Emily mentioned earlier. If you want to go. There we go. And so again, shelter is not a solution to homelessness. It's an emergency response, but it doesn't actually end the homelessness. So we've also focused on ensuring that we're building out our supportive housing capacity. And you can see our system goal is to reach 2,000 households, the capacity to serve 2,000 households at any point in time in our system. And once someone is in a permanent housing program, they stay for a long time. So at some point, our system will be shifting into more of a retention type model where we're focused on keeping households in housing and moving them off of the intensive services into receiving their supports from the community that they live in, and then refilling housing placements through attrition primarily. And this chart reflects the scaling up of our system really, and is what is driving that kind of reduction in unsheltered homelessness and homelessness overall. As you can see, our housing program capacity just skyrocketed in 2023. We have rapid rehousing programs. Those are those short-term programs, permanent supportive housing opportunities, and permanent housing, which also includes supports, but it's a technical HUD definition that differentiates between the two. But the key here is that our ability to provide housing opportunities for folks that are coming through our system has increased significantly in recent years. And the funding to achieve these goals, as we mentioned, the goal is to ensure that we are balancing our system. We don't want to, while there is some sentiment that as long as there are people that are literally homeless outside, that the priority should be to provide emergency shelter and invest a lot of resources in addressing emergency shelter. But our commitment is to ensuring that households that come into emergency shelter are also able to leave the shelter and access permanent housing opportunities. So our funding and our investments are balanced to provide adequate shelter capacity alongside adequate housing options as well. And then we also have one-time and carryover funding, primarily from the supportive housing services tax. And the the governor's executive orders are also included here. Right now, those are expected to be one-time investments in focusing specifically on unsheltered homelessness, but we do expect them to have a longer-term impact. And so we have the ability to make some one-time investments in increasing in permanent additions to our system infrastructure overall. And that is it. Do you have any questions for us?
Wow, I'm impressed. I really am. We did have a question from the audience about people who are at risk of homelessness, and Emily mentioned that you have some programs for that. And I agree. I just wanted to make a quick comment that I've been avoiding downtown for obvious reasons, but I was stopping to get a snack at one of the food carts, and I suddenly realized that if I lost my housing and I had to live on the streets, I'd be mumbling and yelling at people too after a week or so. I mean, it's just the experience of having to live on the streets would attack your mental stability. So, you know, we all kind of make an assumption that the people who find themselves in these positions are, you know, seriously mentally ill, but just being in that position could make you that way. So that I just wanted to make that observation. Bruce.
Yeah, so we are here at the Cedar Grove affordable housing facility, and there was a gentleman here who described what I think is a archetypal problem. His sister has 5 people living in her house, including a woman 72 years old who's in a wheelchair. And the woman in the wheelchair needs to find other housing. So he, you know, I mean, he was sitting right here and he was going, what can I do to get this woman out of my sister's house and into a comfortable housing situation? And so it was, he had dinner he had to go to, but I'm going to communicate to him whatever it is, Emily, you or Catherine suggest. How does a person who is about to lose housing engage housing services?
There are really two pathways, and it sounds like there's a pathway for folks who have a lease in their name, and a pathway for folks that do not have a lease in their name. And depending on individual situations, either pathway can lead to a housing opportunity. It sounds like in this particular instance, the best pathway would be to engage in the coordinated entry process, which is easily accessible by phone or email, or walking into any one of our access centers.
Okay, so what is that specific phone number?
It's 503 640 3263.
263, and the website is?
It's an email address, and I'll grab it and drop it in the chat so I don't mess it up. Trying to say, do you have it already, Emily? I saw you.
Yeah, I was going to say I can pop a link in the chat that is kind of like an overview of that resource.
Perfect.
So
I've got to say, I'm super impressed. I had no idea that we.
I have the question. The 211 system promises access to housing. Are you connected into the 211 system?
So yes, the 211 is a referral source. In some communities have chosen to have their coordinated entry run through 211. In Washington County, our coordinated entry is run through the phone number that I just gave you. And so 211 by and large would refer someone to that number.
And that connection is set up at this time.
Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you.
Well, we've got a lot of candidates champing at the bit here, and we're running a bit long, but this has been absolutely fascinating. And I've seen comments from our candidates that they're appreciating the opportunity to learn about this stuff. So, wow. I mean, I think we could bring you back for a whole nother program. But I totally appreciate this, and I think we do need to transition to the candidate form. However, we did have someone here from Tree Keepers who wanted to call everyone's attention to a webinar that they're having on cool schools, which is how trees can contribute to the health of kids at the schools by having more trees. And I believe I posted that or somebody posted it in the chat, but I didn't want to leave that behind. So now I'm going to get busy and promote a bunch of people. While I do that, you guys can talk amongst yourselves if you like. Wait a minute, what just happened? Why can't I do that? There we go. Promote your panelists. Promote your panelists. We got two people named Clemens, and I'm not sure which one is the candidate. Yeah, we'll sort it out.
Thanks, everyone. I'll go ahead and hop off. But if people have follow-up questions, I just put our email in the chat. I have access to that email, and a couple of our other staff do as well. So we can kind of, whatever your question is, we can route it to the right person, even if it's not technically us. Thanks, everyone.
Is that phone number or is that email address the one that a person would contact to get services?
No, so this is more of like a get your question answered. The Community Connect email, I can pop that in the chat as well.
Okay.
I just
All right, if you're a candidate and I didn't promote you yet, please raise your hand. Oh, Mike Palacios, I see you. Miles Palacios. Jeff Myers, yes. Melissa, I thought I tried, but go ahead and accept it. Yep. All right. So we have a busy little bit of an election forum here. And I screwed up because I failed to understand that everyone can vote for all of the Beaverton School District candidates, whether they're in your zone or not. And so I didn't invite all of the people. And Mike Myers, Jeff Myers, I'm sorry, Mike Myers is on Saturday Night Live. Jeff Myers called my attention to that. He's a candidate in Zone 6, but because we didn't invite any of the other candidates, I mentioned to him that I felt like I would give him a shout out for being interested, but we're only going to hear from the Beaverton School District candidates, which are Ahmed, Clemens, and Potter. And so if you three want to go ahead and we'll just go in alphabetical order with Ahmed first. Go ahead, you can start your, let's go ahead and keep your video up.
So it says to me that the host has disabled my video, so it's not letting me.
No, you start it. Go ahead.
Okay, let's see.
There you are. Okay. Thank you. Maham Ahmed, is that right?
Yep, that's right.
Great. Okay. Introduce yourself and let us know why we should vote for you.
Okay, sounds good. So hi everyone, my name is Maham Ahmed and I'm running for Beaverton School Board here in Zone 3. I join you today as an immigrant, a working mom, and a public policy professional. I'm running for the school board because after talking to a lot of families across the district, I know that parents are struggling and students are struggling too in this post-pandemic environment, and the status quo right now in the district is not working for a lot of families. I'm someone who has a broad base of experience in policy, budget, and program management, working in the federal government for the past 10 years. And I will bring the fresh lens and perspective that people need right now. Our communities are hungry for systemic change, and we know that we need to improve graduation rates and student outcomes overall, but especially for our at-risk students. I wholeheartedly believe in the power of a great public school education. I moved to the US when I was 12, and I attended public school through high school and then went to a public university on financial aid from the state. Students like myself benefit immensely from this collective investment that we make in our next generation, and my public school foundation allowed me to graduate with a master's from an Ivy League university in public administration and work at the highest levels of government, including the White House during the Obama administration. So what does a good public education mean to me and what I want to do on the school board? A good public school education includes academic excellence that prepares students for college, but also includes opportunities to develop our students to become well-rounded, civically engaged members of society with good critical thinking skills. For me, a good public school education includes opportunities to learn about the environment, gives access to music and art education and language immersion programs. And additionally, we need to provide students our opportunities to volunteer, get engaged, and be active in their communities. We have the responsibility to provide a well-rounded education that prepares all of our students to go out in the world with their heads held high, with an amazing educational foundation and a lifetime love of learning. I also want to promote pathways to vocational schools where students can learn skills that would lead to good, high-paying jobs, no matter what they end up doing after high school. I also want to focus on climate education in our science curriculum to ensure that our students are prepared to meet the challenges of climate change. Lastly, we need to be good stewards of the public dollar. We recently passed the levy and the bond that will go towards construction and repair costs at several of the district schools, and we need to make sure that we're doing that in an environmentally sustainable way, since we have that great opportunity right now and we're using the public's investment efficiently. So those are a lot of lofty goals and will require a lot of work. How do we get to that point? Firstly, we need to support our educators. I'm the only candidate here in Zone 3 that is supported by the teachers and endorsed by the Beaverton Education Association. We need to hire and retain good educators and actively fund our education system. We'll get to all of these things by being creative and leveraging public-private partnerships. And there's a lot of federal dollars floating in our communities right now from the Infrastructure Act, and we need to figure out ways to access them for funding in our community here in Beaverton. If I'm on the school board, I have the public policy experience to get that done. I'm also endorsed by several community organizations, as well as a state senator, state representatives, several Beaverton city councilors, and several THPRD directors. Lastly, I'd take about a minute to talk about an issue that specifically is affecting families here in CPO 1, and that is about gun safety. Specifically, less than 2 weeks ago, a student made a gun threat against another student here in one of the elementary schools in CPO 1. The parents in this situation have felt that the district and the school principal didn't do enough to keep the victim safe, and they had to change to another school, causing further distress to the student already victimized by the gun threat. This is unacceptable, and everyone should feel safe in their school, and we need transparent policies, planning, and protocols in place to address these situations. Unfortunately, these threats are far too common in our school. We need to provide consistent, ongoing mental health support, social worker, counselor to the student who's making these threats, but we also need to verify that the student has no access to guns at home, and that we can send an email, at least school-wide, to ensure transparency about the process so that all the kids can feel safe sending their kids to school. The situation who made the threat, the student who made the threat was only given a 2-day suspension and was told have no contact with the victim. That's not possible if they're in the same classroom and are not physically separated. So frankly, as a parent, that's not enough action for me for a threat of this level. And for the sake of our children, we need to do better. And we need to have policies in place for how we can better address these situations and help our kids feel safe and welcome in their own schools. So thank you for having me here today. I would love to have these conversations with all of you. And I have a lot of ideas, but I don't have all the answers to these tough questions. And I want to be a leader for you all. And I'm here to talk and also listen about what the concerns are in your community, in our community. And I would love to discuss any of these with you. And I'm more than happy to talk and share more about my platform. So thank you for having me here.
Yes, why don't you go ahead and put your contact information in the chat. And we're going to move along to the next candidate.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Connie?
Virginia, you're echoing.
Okay. Connie, there you go. Be sure to unmute. We can't hear you. Unmute.
How's that?
Much better. Thank you.
Okay. I want to thank you,
being able to
Virginia.
Participate in a Zoom meeting is part of the job description.
Yeah. I want to thank you for starting out with that little historical piece. I appreciated it. So, hello, my name is Connie Clemens. I'm a retired Beaverton teacher. I spent 30 years in the classrooms of West Tualatin View and Raleigh Park. Why should you vote for me? I have some thoughts on that and several reasons. The current makeup of the board, the number of kids who never returned to the schools after COVID, a study that revealed 52% of the teachers want to quit, special interest groups with priorities that are outside maybe of the realm of education. There's just many reasons that I think I would be a good person for the board. But tonight I'm going to focus on one that is particularly important to the quality of education that we give our kids here in Beaverton. Curriculum is the outlining of what each grade level is required to teach. The state has developed its K-12 curriculum, but districts like Beaverton can develop their own, and it has done that. Right now, it's in the process of rolling out the social science curriculum that was developed by, for Beaverton School District by a team. Their last names are Swalwell and Spikes. You can read about them on the internet if you're interested, but back to my focus. I've noticed in meetings I've attended lately that there's no mention about the quality of education we're offering our students. So that's what I want to talk about tonight. Candidates are talking about equity, CPOs, which is the acronym for police officers in our schools, race and sex education issues. Not one of the discussions I've listened to has focused on strengthening the education of our students. Yet that's precisely what you and I are expecting with our tax dollars. Certainly we can build a curriculum that will give our students a fantastic knowledge base and a desire to continue learning. Current topics like social justice awareness can and should be included, especially at the high school levels, but they should not be at the center of what we teach. Let me give you an example. As a fourth grade teacher, the curriculum for social studies I used included several things: scale and mapping, world geography like continents and oceans, early explorations that included Lewis and Clark, Native Americans of the Pacific Northwest, the fur trade of early Oregon, the pioneers, and finally, Oregon today. Woven into a month-long study of our Indigenous people, 30 to 40 minutes a day, we studied how they adapted to their natural surroundings, living creatively off the land. We learned about how our rivers were their highways. We had a potlatch party to celebrate our natural riches. We traveled to an authentic longhouse to hear Indian legends around a campfire from a real chief, etc., etc., etc. The children had admiration for what these people were able to accomplish, and loved studying about the Indigenous people of Oregon. In contrast, the new social science curriculum for fourth grade that Beaverton has created includes some of the state standards, but it, on the whole, is less about Oregon than the state curriculum and far less than what I described from years past. Unit 1 is about our personal identities and how different kinds of harm can be done to us. The second unit is about the plight of the Native American. I urge you to look at the lessons to know what I don't have time to describe to you today. But in short, our students are not being served well when they know nothing about the great culture of the Native Americans, as just one example from this new curriculum. And where did all those other topics go? Are they ever even taught anymore? So why should you vote for me? We've been assuming that the changes to the curriculum through the past years have come from enlightened people. I'm not so convinced. I promise to look seriously at the curriculum. Are kids receiving reading and writing instruction 90 minutes a day like it used to be in the past? How does Oregon assess students' knowledge of history? Do our graduating students have basic understanding of how things work? I could go on. There's just so much to learn to be well functioning in today's advanced world. A secondary administrator told me, and I quote, "There's just too much information to teach. Today, we teach kids how to find information." Of course, that depends on the motivation of a student. Will he even go looking? Teachers can make things far more interesting than the internet. I'd like to close with one little personal note. At the end of the day, when my grandson comes home, I ask him, "What do you know today that you didn't know yesterday?" And he often has an answer, and that makes him happy, and that makes Grandma happy. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Melissa, you're up next. Go ahead and start your video.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this evening. My name is Melissa Potter, and I'm running for Zone 3 of the Beaverton School Board. I'm running for school board because our schools are essential to the fabric of our community. And we are fortunate to have a community who values our schools and continues to invest in the success of our young people. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and do my part on the school board so we can create schools in which all of our students are welcomed, affirmed, safe, and challenged to achieve their own greatness. To achieve this lofty goal, we need to place students at the center of all of our decision-making. I have the background and experience to support this effort. My own kids are currently in Beaverton schools and have been in Beaverton schools for 9 years. I'm a community and school volunteer. In fact, I was recently with a group of amazing middle schoolers as they completed their habitat service project for 8th grade. It was a little rainy, a little cold, but it was very fun. I was the first in my family to graduate from college. I have a master's degree and doctorate in educational leadership. I taught high school science in Beaverton for 6 years, and for the last 15 years, I have been working with and for universities to prepare teachers with a specific focus to diversify our teaching workforce so that our teaching staff reflects our community. All of our students will benefit from us bringing the assets and expertise of our community into our classrooms. Through my experiences, I have a unique understanding of the challenges board members, teachers, families, and students face, including the social, emotional, and academic issues confronting students daily. The timing of this election is crucial. In July, all but one of our school board members will have 2 years or less of experience on the board. Having new members with a deep understanding of the district and of public education will be critical to the board's success. Our students do not have the luxury of time for us to learn about the nuances and complexities of public education. I am very honored to have endorsements from many respected leaders: the Democratic Party of Washington County, Mayor Lacey Beatty, School Board Chair Tom Collette, Vice Chair Karen Perez, THPRD Director Felicity Monteblanco, Oregon State Treasurer Tobias Reed, Chair Washington County Commissioners Catherine Harrington, Commissioner Pam Treese, and many more. These leaders and I recognize the importance of the school board election for our community. School boards make decisions that help us build the future for our community. As a candidate and a board member, I am committed to making students our first priority in policy and budget decisions, using our community resources wisely by supporting what is working and having the courage to discontinue what isn't, and by building trust and collaboration by listening to the voices of everyone who cares about the education of Beaverton School District students. In particular, this evening, we were asked to consider an issue that affects the folks in the CPO 1 area. Of all the CPOs, CPO 1 is known for its sustained and effective capacity to bring community together. In line with celebrating this level of community involvement, I would offer a commitment to collaboration in all of its forms. I am even optimistic that a commitment to collaboration will be included in the district's new strategic plan that should be presented in the coming months. These are challenging times for our students and families, and we can improve our service to our students by expanding our opportunities for collaboration. As many folks in CPO 1 know, collaboration does not just magically happen. It takes intention, structure, and energy to have sustained, effective collaboration. We have good examples of this between the Beaverton School District Student Advisory Committee, the school board, and district leadership. I would also like to see the continued and thoughtful collaboration between our community-based organizations, Portland Community College, and our efforts to welcome more of our community members to become teachers. Our community-based organizations like Adelante Mujeres, Community Action, Centro Cultural, Mente, Apano, Muslim Educational Trust, Beaverton Black Parent Union, and more serve our students and our communities in ways that our schools do not yet. By establishing thoughtful, intentional opportunities for collaboration and celebrating and honoring what we each bring to the collaboration, we can help support each other's efforts to serve our community and our students. Our teachers and staff also need time for collaboration. Right now, we have many pockets of excellence throughout the district as our teachers adjust their strategies to meet the changing needs of our students. By giving our teachers time to learn from each other, we can broaden the impact of their great ideas and practices. We see some creative and budget neutral structures for collaboration in some of our buildings. We can learn from what is already working to support system-wide collaboration. Our students and our families are also served by our colleagues in other organizations. We can broaden our capacity to serve our community if we thoughtfully build our collaboration with our THPRD, city, and county colleagues. None of us can meet all of the needs in our community on our own. So to keep in the community spirit of CPO 1, I would like to offer a commitment to collaboration. And who knows, in the months and years to come, perhaps some of the folks on this call will be sharing their expertise on behalf of students. I'm ready to get to work and continue our work to help our students have the schools they need and they deserve. Thank you so much for your time this evening. I'm very grateful to be here. Virginia, I think you might be muted. Virginia, I think you might be muted.
Absolutely right.
We've all done it,
we
right?
invited, yes, go ahead and type in your contact information in the chat box. We invited all the candidates for THPRD board, but only Miles jumped out and accepted our invitation. So thank you for attending. And I'm going to pin you and take it away, Miles. Tell us why we should
Thank you so
vote
much,
for you.
Virginia. Of course. Well, folks, my name is Miles Palacios. I am a candidate for the Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District, position 4. I would love to tell a little bit more about myself as a transition to talking more about why I am running for this position. I am born and raised here in Oregon. I grew up in McMinnville, Oregon. My parents came up to Oregon from the San Jose and Los Gatos area with the hope of building community and opportunity for their family, which ended up being myself and 4 siblings. So we have quite a big family. What community looked like for my family was being deeply involved in the city of McMinnville. My father was an educator for about 35 years and just retired for the second time. And so he's excited to be transitioning to that time of his life. And my mother was a city employee. But we connected a lot in our community by using the park system, by using our recreation and our aquatic center there in McMinnville. And it was a big piece of the holistic experience of our childhood, being involved in the community, but also having the opportunity and access to recreate. And a big part of why we were able to do that is because my parents were so intent on learning of those services and taking advantage of them. So that connection to recreation and the outdoors and the services that local offices can offer our community was a big piece of my life from an early stage. Later in life, through university, I graduated and eventually started working in the world of Oregon government. I started my first role with the office of Janine Solomon in her first year as a state representative, then went on to the governor's office where I worked first in constituent services, then as a policy analyst for climate team. But during that time as working as a policy analyst, I also started to balance work as a policy aide for the first gentleman of Oregon and his initiative, the Roadmap to the Outdoors. This is where I started to get into the professional policy piece of my connection to the outdoors and recreation specifically. The Roadmap to the Outdoors initiative was focused on creating more access to the outdoors within the state of Oregon and ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to recreate. What that really began to look like was partnering with both private and public offices. So we saw state agencies, corporations, nonprofits, trust funds, all these different trusts and all these different groups come together and pose the question of how can we make the outdoors for everyone? So a lot of that work became changing the materials in which we promote the outdoors, making sure that different faces, experiences, levels of ability are represented in printed materials, as well as access to the languages that we have available to folks as they recreate, so that they know safety protocols. They know that if they get hurt out on a trail, they know who they can reach. And then also looking at levels of access in terms of getting out and recreating, knowing that so many folks that live in our inner cities don't have their own modes of transportation. And so exploring ways that we can make the outdoors more accessible to folks who may only know the concrete jungle of Portland or other metro areas around the state. All of this really came with me into the next role of my life, which was continuing spaces in the space of equity and work, where I am now as the executive director of a nonprofit called the Oregon Association of Student Councils. This is a nonprofit that works throughout the state and invests in helping young people grow as leaders and breaking down the exclusivity of leadership and creating opportunity. And we promote so much within that space that is really exciting in having kiddos know that they should support other people in their community as they grow and learn. And that pairs so well with the world of recreation, because recreation is for everyone. It is for our single family households. It is for single households, family households, our children, our 55 and better population. Everyone has the opportunity of accessing the outdoors as well as accessing the services. And within the Parks and Recreation District here in Tualatin Hills, we've really started to explore how can we make this more accessible for folks. The the things that I am most passionate about as I continue this campaign is maintaining services and building financial stability for the district, access and outreach of the services that are present in this district, and conservation and climate responsibility. And the one that I think is most important to share here this evening is the maintaining of services and financial stability of the district. There was a huge drop in services that are offered to our community members as a result of the pandemic. I know that if anyone listening this evening has tried to get into a class or tried to sign up their kiddos for swim lessons or something like that, those wait lists are longer than they have ever been. To ensure we're able to get back into a place where we are able to provide the level of service that our community deserves and expects, we have to make sure that we are consolidating, being intentional, and making sure that we are not putting more of a price burden on the folks at the point of service in which they are accessing Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation services. So as we look into that, it is important to know that sometimes it's better to do a little bit less better before we get back into doing more. And as we explore those options, we look to the community to connect and learn and hear about what people are hoping to see as we explore these new funding possibilities. As we get services back up and running. Sunset Pool just went back up this last week, but it's reduced hours and reduced opportunities there. But we are always looking to see how we can make the Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District more accessible and secure for the community in which we serve. So in closing, I guess the last little bit that I'll say here is you can see a full list of my endorsements at milesfororegon.com. I'll drop all of this information on how to contact me and check out the 20 plus elected and organizational endorsements that I have for this campaign, and then also learn ways to connect with me. But I really just want to thank this forum in this space to be able to share with all of you and connect. And I just look forward to serving you in this community. Thank you all so much.
Thank you very much for attending. We're going to move on to Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, but we're also going to have a little bit of time at the end for people to ask questions. So candidates, please stick around. We have Randy Lauer and we have Mohammed Kabir, but he keeps declining to be a panelist. So maybe we'll just hear from him by voice. Let's give you a pen. Randy Lauer, running for the Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue Board. Go ahead and unmute.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I figured this out. I'm a little technologically challenged. My name's Randy Lauer. I'm running for the 4th term on Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue's Board of Director. For the last 3 years, I've been the president of the board. I started on the budget committee in 2011. And I was gravitated towards Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue because my history and background, my career path has been emergency medical services for the last, almost 50 years now. I hate to date myself, but it's the truth. I started as a volunteer EMT in a rural ambulance service, and I came to the West Coast when I joined the Coast Guard and was stationed at the mouth of the Columbia River. I spent 5 years of active duty and 27 years of reserve. And along the same time, I was working as a paramedic in the local area. So I am one of your incumbents, and just you probably know that Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue does not have districts. We're at-large elected. So I am your North District representative pretty much. And my colleagues all live south of here quite a ways. But just for your information, our board meetings are typically the 4th Tuesday of every month at 3 p.m. You can attend live at our building in Tigard, or you can join by Zoom. And just like this meeting, it's streamed live on YouTube. So congratulations.
I've got to say that out of all of the districts that I tried to invite, the fire district was the most opaque website I could find. So maybe
really?
If you'll get reelected, you can work on that.
Oh, I'll work on the other thing I'll work on is making sure that there's someone from Tualatin Valley here at these meetings, because I need to back up a little bit and thank you for carving out time in this very busy and very informative agenda. I'm very impressed by the topics you covered. And I just want to give a shout out to Washington County Housing Services, to Emily and Catherine. And I know they're probably not with us on the meeting anymore, but Washington County, compared to the two counties to the east of us, submitted a plan to the state that was deemed exceptional in terms of how they're going to deal with it. I think that the information we saw they presented is really evidence of that. So I just really want to highlight that. I've been involved with homeless and houseless services for a number of years with my regular work, and Washington County's got it figured out. It's heading in the right direction. So kudos to the housing services. So our next meeting, just to kind of follow that theme, is on the 25th at 3 p.m. You can join virtually or in person. And then we have a budget hearing on May 11th. So typically there's one board meeting every month, and then there's two budget committee meetings every year in March and then in May. So that's kind of our schedule and agenda. But my interest in being on the board of Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, aside from being involved with emergency medical services for so long, is that I live here. I've lived in the Bonnie Slope and Cedar Mill area for probably 42 years now. And it's my home. It's where my wife and I live, and we raised our kids, and where we plan on living for the rest of our lives. So being able to give back to my community is something that my parents taught me at a very young age, and I've never forgotten. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. I'm going to be retiring probably in about a year. So I'll stay on the Tualatin Valley board if I'm lucky enough to be reelected, but I would very much like to continue serving all of you. And I'll put my information in chat. So if you have any issues or questions or concerns about emergency medical services or fire response in our CPO, you can let me know anytime, and I guarantee I'll follow up on it right away. So in the interest of brevity, I'll just kind of stop right there. But thank you again for opening up your meeting, your very informative meeting, to hearing some candidates talk.
Thanks. I live in Bonnie Slope too.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not quite sure what we're going to do with Muhammad. Are you there, Muhammad? Can you unmute? Are you going to share anything with us? He's here. Mystery. Well, we'll round back up with him later. We have Carl Fisher. Go ahead and start your video, Carl. And there's your pin. Carl Fisher is running for the Tualatin Valley Water District Board.
Yep. Greetings, everyone. I'm Carl. I'm a commissioner on the Tualatin Valley Water District, currently holding position 2 that I was appointed to in July after spending 2 terms on the district's budget committee. Unfortunately, we had a member of our board who had to resign due to health issues. And so in a pinch, I was asked to fill that vacancy and was told, oh, yes, you'll have to run this year. So I'm running this year, and if I'm elected, I will serve out the rest of that member's term and then have to run again for a full term in 2025. So it'll be busy next couple years if I'm elected to the board for the rest of this term. So just a little background on me. I'm a second generation resident of the Tigard-Metzger area. My family moved here in the 1950s. In fact, it was infrastructure projects that brought my grandparents, my grandfather to this region. He worked building the highways and dams of the Pacific Northwest after World War II, and this is where they settled. And so it's been really fun to see our whole region sort of grow as a family. I go places with my father all the time, and he tells me when things were just, places where you could go fishing or hunting, and now there's people and homes and businesses that are just thriving. We have a thriving, bustling community here in Washington County, and we want to help it grow successfully. So infrastructure stuff has always been sort of fascinating to me. I'm on the Tigard Citizen Advisory Transportation Group when we advise the city council on transportation issues. And I'm also on the Metzger Park Local Advisory Board, which is where CPO 4M meets, or they did before the pandemic. Now it's virtual. Jim Long runs a lovely little CPO group. And so I'm really grateful for CPO groups still kicking it through the pandemic and keeping strong. But yeah, so infrastructure has always intrigued me. And in high school, I got a car ride around the Tualatin Valley Water District and other places where Tualatin Valley gets its water from. And one of those places is Scoggins Dam. And I remember being driven over Scoggins Dam, and we stopped, and my friend said, "Well, Carl, you probably heard something about like a big earthquake that could happen one day, and if that big earthquake happens, that whole valley you see below you is wiped out." And you know, being the high schooler, I was sort of like, "Oh, well, maybe we should get back into the car and keep on driving." So that was sort of like my first real insights that water infrastructure is just as critical as every other piece of infrastructure we have in our region. And when the chance came to be on the budget committee, I was like, you know, I think I'm ready to be on the budget committee for my local water district. And you know, special districts, you know, we've heard from the school, from fire, from parks. All local governments are being asked to do more right now, more than they've ever had to do before. And that's true with water districts. Right now, we're in the final stages of completing a $1.6 billion infrastructure project that was envisioned in the 1970s. It's called the Willamette Water Supply Program. And one of the key components that we've learned from all this is, especially the pandemic shone the light on everything, is that many members of our community are struggling to pay their bills. And if they're struggling to pay the rent, if they're struggling to pay electricity, they're probably struggling to pay water at some point. And so for the first time that I'm aware of, the Tualatin Valley Water District convened its Citizen Rate Advisory Committee together to come up with a low-income customer assistance program that any low-income customer in Washington County in our district could apply for. And so we're in the final stages of developing that rate advisory program. And so that should be coming out sometime this year. And it's going to be interesting to see how that's navigated and who will get to do that. If we think community action is going to be a part of that, they may become the administrators of the program. So keep up for more information on that. But that's like the first big piece of this when you invest in this new infrastructure is any water district, this happens, you get new infrastructure, your costs go up. And we don't get taxpayer dollars. All water is paid for by the users. So if you're a customer of TVWD, you're paying for the system. And the more people that you have in the system, the lower your costs can be. But you know, most local governments have a very fixed size. So there's going to be a set rate that every customer in TVWD is going to pay. And most likely it'll be the highest rates in the county until the next city or the next district comes along and invests in their infrastructure. You know, 44 miles of pipes throughout Washington County for TVWD, and this new water system we're going to be putting on, that's going to be a generational investment to where in 100 years, you know, it's going to outlive most of us. Most of us will not be around when those pipes start to be needing to be replaced. So
You
big
know,
investment
Carl,
now. Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the confusions that occurs with a lot of folks in the county, we are county residents. We're not city residents, and they come from other places where everything's folded in together. Whereas in the urban and incorporated Washington County, we're not paying for water through our property taxes.
Yeah.
That the water is in our water bill. And it's real hard for people to wrap their minds around, but I constantly get comments about my water bill's so high. When I lived in this city, it wasn't anything like that. So you got your work cut out for you.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that, the last rate advisory committee suggested to us, we were one of the local governments who was billing bi-monthly. And, working people do not budget bi-monthly. Working people budget every month. So that's one of the changes that's happening this year is we're transitioning to monthly billing.
Yeah.
And if you need to figure out who your water provider is, I'm going to put a link in the chat from the Regional Water Consortium. If you just type in your address, you'll know who your water provider is.
Yeah. Well, we've reached the 9 o'clock hour, and many of the people here would like to go resume their normal lives. So I think we'll go ahead and call it quits. I didn't see any questions for any of our candidates. I totally appreciate everyone showing up. I hope we've helped a few voters here because it's really kind of nice to see people, even if it's only virtual, that we might be asked to vote for. So unless anybody pops their hand up right now, I'm going to suggest we adjourn the meeting. Okay, thanks everybody for coming. If you really like in-person meetings, you can come along to Cedar Grove Apartments next month. We have the technology. It worked real good. And thanks to the OEICE office for providing us with some of that technology. And thanks so much to Cedar Grove Apartments for making it possible. It's a very nice location right at the corner of Murray and Cornell. And hey, we'll see you next month. Bye.